Welcome to Discovering Dowsing.
Discovering dowsing is as much about discovering yourself. So it's that inner and outer journey, they both have to be in balance.
It's accessing and affirming that your intuition is
Yeah.
connected with the cosmos, the universe. You are one with it. And dowsing is a journey of discovery into the self, but also as within, so without, as above, so below. And dowsing is an amazing, infinite expression of consciousness. Just to introduce ourselves, I'm Alex Russell-Stoneham. I'm a holistic coach and healer who has been a dowser for many years and integrate and weave it into everyday life as well as my practice. And I love sharing knowledge and learning and connecting.
I'm David Atkinson and been a dowser for many years. I work as a psychic healer, which actually is dowsing, just under a different name.
Mm.
So yeah, there are so many ways that we can work as dowsers, for sure.
So there was this woman, Alana Moore, and she's a very experienced dowser. She's worked with earth energies, nature spirits for a long, long time, originally hailing from Australia, and has a lot of understanding and connection with the indigenous culture there. And she's been fascinated by the indigenous culture, the Celtic sort of myths and everything in Ireland, where she's ended up living, and the lushness with all the rain you get. So it's good for growing. And she had some pictures of when she's been working with the fairy kingdom, the growth, a bit like Findhorn. She's got this picture of her with this giant cabbage. It's literally like that.
Okay.
I, I could try and bring it up and show you. I'll ping it to you in a message, but yeah, quite profound connection with water spirits, earth energies, earth spirits, like elementals and stuff. And she was talking about trees because she's so deeply connected with nature.
Yeah.
She was talking about how trees have a chakra system
Yeah.
and
Well,
plants have
surely most things have a chakra system,
you.
but
But has anyone ever discussed it? You know what I mean? It doesn't
yeah,
in the
yeah.
common sort of, yeah, how can I balance this tree chakra system, for
Mm,
example? Does it need balancing? Is it the same? I'm sure it's the rainbow colors as well. Uh,
yeah.
and the other thing she was saying about plants is that they have 11 senses.
Okay.
And again, that was novel, new, and it's like such a rich tapestry of experience right now.
Yeah,
Just receiving, taking in, and connecting with people, but it's a different energy to the acquisitive sense of knowledge. It's more
yeah,
like, oh, this is coming up in my awareness. How does this feel? How does it land?
yeah.
Can I play with it? How come alchemy is the word of the moment? I'm reading this book, as you know, keep getting very excited about the connections. Like, oh, Hermes, and this, that, gods. So yeah, it just feels sort of unstoppable journey unraveling in a positive, lovely, gorgeous way. That's how.
Yeah, yeah. That sounds very magical. And you're talking about the trees having chakras. I've mentioned before about the ley lines having these rainbow lines, and that's very much the chakras of the ley line, and you can see each individual color.
Mm.
And also, when you're talking about rebalancing, again, you can see whether a rainbow line is slightly broader than the next one, or whether there's one
Mm.
that's quite diminished. And that kind of tells you where the strengths and weaknesses are in that ley line. Um,
Same
so
thing.
yeah, yeah, exactly the same thing. And it's the same with, I'm going to call them dragon lines. I don't really know what else to call them, um, but very different to a ley line. Um, and again, they have the rainbow lines within them as well.
Mm.
Um, but slightly different to ley lines, hence the differentiation in name.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is really lovely, actually. You mentioned dragon lines. Um, Dragons, I've noticed in the collective consciousness, have been making more of an appearance in the last few years. You know, what with certain films like How to Train Your Dragon, Game of Dragons. I've noticed as well, just a slight aside, that recently in in the world, I've noticed a lot more unicorns as well. You know, obviously it's very targeted to let's say primary school children, um, but been a real flourish of it. You know, and
Yeah.
when you see things coming up in the culture or consciousness, it's often for a bigger, let's say, channeled reason. You know,
Yeah.
when did you become aware of dragon lines? How did you discern them? If you feel that
Um,
ley lines, which are more human intent lines, aren't they? And they're sort of straight dragon lines, they're sort of more, I would say, sort of meandery or sort of curved or, you know, sinuous.
yeah.
How
Um,
did you?
so I think to explain, I'll explain something else first. Like for me, I've grown up with very male dominated environments, military environments, and very kind of male dominated work environments.
Mm,
So yeah, for me, unicorns, dragons have always been a bit like, what you on about? Fairies, what you on about? Um, so yeah, even when you're talking about it, there's still a little bit of resistance to it, but it's something that's kind of naturally come into my awareness. It's not yeah, it's not something that's always been there. And like I say, there's still a little bit of resistance. Um, the dragon lines, what I noticed was I was dowsing up at Liddington Castle, which is just off the M4 near Swindon. And I was looking for ley lines. And when I look for ley lines, what I do is I then find the rainbow lines in the ley line. So what happens with a ley line is you'll find the outer edge. There'll be some space before you reach the rainbow lines, and then you'll find the rainbow lines, and then there's a space before you then exit the ley line. And what I noticed up at Liddington Castle was there was a ley line on the east side that kind of came in and then went back out again. And then on the west side, there was another line, but it wasn't a ley line because the rainbow lines were right on the outside of
mm,
of the line. So they started as soon as I found it, and they were a lot broader than a ley line's rainbow lines. Um, yeah, and I've since found it running through Avebury as well. And one of the things that I've noticed about it is with ley lines, if they're going to increase or diminish in size, they do it widthways. Whereas the dragon lines seem to do it lengthways. So what happens is the curve will get greater. If there's a curve there, it will get greater as it grows. So it
yeah.
will bend further round and take
Mm,
a longer path, um, which is quite interesting. And it's only been maybe 2 or 3 months that I've started noticing these lines. So I'm not fully like I've not seen them enough and experienced them enough to be able to share more than I already have.
mm,
So yeah, it's just very interesting that there is that differentiation and
mm.
it's very clear. So
Interesting. Yeah,
yeah,
that feels really different, doesn't it? Sort of.
yeah,
So the the ley lines, you know, people, I guess, if they're relatively new to dowsing or they're sort of just stumbling across it, ley lines are probably one of the most well-known terms
Yeah.
in earth energy sort of language and terminology. And they're literally just straight lines typically, aren't they, where they go across the world? Or do you find that they, it's like the pilgrimage sort of lines and sort of things
Yeah.
where people have co-created with the world and there's a kind of mapped energy. That's my impression of them. But I haven't spent lots of time on them
Yeah.
myself. I've just historically just wanted to feel into the energy of a sacred site like Avebury or, with the Michael and Mary lines, which are more wibbly wobbly, which could be described as more dragon type of lines, the living.
So,
So you tell me your perception because every
yeah.
dancer has their what they bring to the table, right? So I'd love to hear
Yeah.
what you'd say
So,
to a beginner dowser or somebody curious.
yeah, if you were to take the Michael Mary ley line, it's easier to explain it with that because it's well known.
Yeah.
You get the map and you draw a straight line between these sites, and
Mm.
it gives you a rough idea of the path of the ley lines. But
Yes.
that's not the ley line itself.
Mm.
Um, the ley lines themselves do meander,
Okay.
and it seems that they meander differently in different countries. So I found the Michael Mary ley line in Nicaragua. Now, in Nicaragua, there aren't churches in the same way that we have churches. In the UK, there are many churches. They tend to be quite grand buildings.
Mm.
Whereas in Nicaragua, in the main cities, there are a lot of churches and cathedrals. But out in the countryside, there's a block built building, very, very basic, um, seemingly randomly placed. And I kind of feel that with the in Nicaragua, with there being less almost like fixing points, focal points, that they tend to meander a lot more. They're still doing that kind of snake energy where they do cross each other, but
Mm.
they can meander a lot more than they would do in the UK. Whereas in the UK, there are all these churches which are focal points for human beings. And no matter what you feel about the church, everything was built with a good intent.
Mm.
And if you look at a building being a um, Pythagorean uh, building, then it helps to amplify sound and
Yes, with the
energy.
golden mean, the golden section, those sacred geometry principles, and
Yeah,
things like this, or the flower of life, or other shapes designed into the windows, and yeah, all the harmony, harmony principles for how something can sit on or in the land, which is
yeah,
super important, isn't it? And you can feel it when it's
yeah,
out of kilter.
yeah. And those focal points, when you understand that our auras grow when we stand on a ley line or an earth energy,
Mm.
and it can grow with ley lines, it can grow like 6 to 10 times the size.
Mm.
And then if you've got a group aura and you're all in this building, you have this group aura that's amplified because you're on a ley line. That energy is being taken outwards along the ley line.
Mm.
And if there's this beautiful intention being put in, praise in whatever way,
Mm.
then actually that is going outwards. Um,
Absolutely. What about
yeah,
what about with song as well?
with song,
That
yeah,
amplifies even more, especially if there's more voices and just
yeah,
the like you were saying, the intent and let's say the purity, the high vibes of the song and being sung.
yeah.
I notice
And
if I put Gregorian chant on in the background when I'm making my candles, for example,
Yeah.
It just changes the atmosphere. There's something that feels different.
Yeah.
Same with mantras, bhajans, and so on. It's lovely.
Yeah. And it's highly likely that things like organs or any instruments that would have been in the building would have been tuned to a Pythagorean scale,
Mm,
which
yes.
again is amplified because of the building and it's
Mm,
getting people to sing in that musical scale as well.
yeah.
Before that, they might have used solfeggio scale. There's so many awesome things. It's only been, I think, 80 years since we've had a fixed musical scale.
Yes.
Um,
At
yeah.
different hertz as well,
Yes. Yeah,
which
that's
people
yeah,
tend
that's
to
the main.
say is a little bit out of kilter with how the body needs to receive it. Is it 440 versus 432, which is the more
Yeah,
harmonic
yeah,
frequency?
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting how we can have that effect on ley lines. So
Yes. Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. So we've talked, excuse me, we've talked a little bit about the big, landscape, the Michael and Mary line, excuse me, the Michael and Mary line, and how, you've noticed the quality of it in Nicaragua is different with the size and type of build of churches on the line, as
yeah,
opposed to it going through southwest England and up through diagonally through the country. If you're sitting in your home right now, how would you know if you are sitting on a ley line or a dragon line or any kind of other energy lines? Because there's lots of different energies that can
yeah,
flow. There's underground water energy.
yeah,
There are fairy lines, spirit lines. There are so many. I mean, we could maybe put something in the show notes about the kind of lines that we're aware of with a little simple description of
yeah,
what we think feel that they are. And the dowsing community is quite broad as well. And it's, like you say, a broad church. So people have different opinions. Some people find the
yeah,
term ley line confusing and try not to use it because it's too generic. So, so there's somebody sitting listening to this in their home thinking, have I got an energy line here? How would I know? I mean, how would we discern this?
yeah. Dowsing is one of the best ways for sure.
Yeah.
And it's like you were saying about putting things in the show notes. It's to be able to work out what it is, you need to be able to have a set of questions to ask, whether, okay, is it a ley line? Is it a vortex? Is it um, a dragon line?
Yeah.
And if you can ask all these questions, then you can actually find out what it is. And ley lines are everywhere.
Mm.
So it doesn't, if your house isn't on a ley line, it won't be far away from a ley line.
No.
And we generally talk a lot about the Michael Mary ley line or
Yes.
other very specific ley lines, but they generally are the ones that tend to be the strongest. So
Yes.
people notice them more.
Yes. And they're so strong, it would be a bit too much to live on top of one.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, I would agree with you, David, that dowsing is kind of for me the most useful way to discern energy and to get feedback on energy. And let's imagine we were starting out now, knowing what we know today, having practiced this for quite a few years. Um, if we were starting out, I know some of my lovely friends at Thames Valley Dowsers, they're doing a teaching afternoon for new
okay,
dowsers today. And on another Dowsers YouTube channel, Tim Walter, who studied under Hamish Miller, who wrote about the Michael and Mary lines with Paul Broadhurst in The Sun and the Serpent, which I would say is probably the most loved book
yeah,
by a dowser for people who are interested in that subject. I mean, just everyone speaks so fondly of Hamish Miller. He's absolutely amazing, and there's a video on Tim Walter's channel which I'll link to, which shows about how Hamish Miller is teaching people to dowse, and this is the same practice used at Thames Valley Dowsers teaching afternoons. You basically get some dowsing rods and hold them. Typically, it could be indoors or outdoors, but you have a bit of rope on the ground, and just concentrate on walking over the rope and ask your dowsing rods to show you the rope. You know where it is visually, and the dowsing rods tend to cross. And so then you get your first bit of feedback. And the other thing to be conscious of is being hydrated. So you have drunk enough water, because your body is a conductor, if you like, of this electromagnetic energy, really. So we are tuning into a field, and it's good to get grounded. So, whatever grounding means to you, whether you intentionally connect with Mother Earth through the soles of your feet, or just literally go outside and ground with shoes off on the grass, that's a lovely thing. And just feeling clear internally, taking a few nice deep breaths to center yourself, maybe having the idea of any agenda or any attachment to the outcome of what your dowsing response, kind of park that to one side. So a meditation practice is perfect for being able to have that muscle memory for that. So just being neutral. So feeling gently curious, but not need to know, is helpful. I'm curious, that feels open. I need to know is a bit pinchy. It's sort of, and I'm asking for permission, and asking that, can I do this? May I do this? Some people say, should I do this? Is it appropriate that I do this, rather than do I have the ability to do it? So permission is good, because you're going in with good grace, that you have a connection, a bit of feedback that, yes, it's okay to proceed. It's not invasive and intrusive. Other ethics to consider is not going into other people's lives and stories without their direct express permission. So you wouldn't necessarily douse somebody else's home without having met them or being asked to do so. It feels more ethical to do that. Getting dowsing rods as well is good, or a pendulum. Those are our tools of the trade. There are loads of other things as well. People dowse with their own bodies. If anyone's had muscle testing with kinesiology, that feels very similar to dowsing with the body. Muscles resist, or they don't. They do some sort of signs, if you like, for yes, no, and strength of yes, no as well. So yeah, walking in your home and asking. Just for me, I love, if I'm doing a feng shui or house healing, I love just asking, where's the flow of energy here, the qi flow, it's called in China. And so it's like a gentle flow of river, and it often goes, when you go through the front door, it sort of flows around to the left, in my experience, and then it's just quite sinuous and sort of meandery. And then you just follow it around, and it just feels nice to be walking the line of the energy, a bit like walking outside, following an energy line. It is kind of uplifting and expansive feeling. And then if we're clear in our own body, in our mind, if it feels a little bit either imbalanced or maybe a bit unhappy or whatever the line, you can feel it in your being, but the rods kind of respond with they kind of, instead of being parallel, they kind of cross over to sort of show you a patch where maybe there's something that needs support right now. And also our impressions of our conversations, our arguments even, or our emotions are definitely deposited in and around the house, aren't they? In the walls, in the fabric of the building, the building.
Furniture.
Yeah. Sorry,
Yeah.
what did you say? I didn't hear.
Furniture is
Furniture. Yeah.
yeah, I remember years ago I was dowsing somebody's basement and there was a piece of furniture in there. I said to them that the energy in this furniture is not right and cleared the energy from it. And then they told me the story of how it come from a friend and it was built by their husband. And their husband was an alcoholic
Mm,
and was abusive.
mm,
So there was this energy in this piece of furniture.
mm,
Yeah, it's very, very intriguing. Couple of things that I would also add um, about learning to dowse is don't do personal stuff. Don't do personal stuff for other people. Um, the reason I say that, especially when you're learning, is because it's highly likely that you're going to affect the answer. It is possible to move the dowsing rod with your mind. So if you're invested in the question and you ask the question, then it's likely that you're going to affect the answer. So it's really helpful not to do that. I
mm,
would say it's easier to learn with a dowsing rod than it is a pendulum.
mm,
Just because there's so many different variables with a pendulum.
mm,
There are variables with dowsing rod as well,
mm,
but there's less. So it's easier to um to kind of have that. What I would say is the way I teach people is I create a square on the floor, and that square is then a neutral zone.
mm,
So if you were to put your rope on the floor and you're working in a neutral zone, then you know that you're not going to be picking up on other things. One of the things that I found in teaching people randomly, just using a space is that one person is going, "Oh, I found something over here." And another person is going, "Oh, I found something over here." And you're like, "No, no, I want you to concentrate on the ley line that's just here." And because we all pick up on energies differently,
yes.
it can be quite sporadic.
Mm,
So to have that neutral zone, and
mm,
you can just have a rug, for example, and just have that rug and say, okay, this rug is my neutral zone. And then lay your rope out or put a glass of water on that rug and start with that.
mm.
So, yeah,
Interesting. And yeah, thank you though, because you mentioned water.
yeah,
Most people think of dowsing as water divining.
yeah.
I believe Moses in the Bible used dowsing rods to
Okay.
find a place to cross. Um, there's a long history of finding water. Water is essential for life, and there are many other different types of dowsing. So we've been talking about earth energies, and we've been talking about energy lines, and just simply sort of following the energy or sort of crossing a rope and getting our dowsing rods to sort of give us feedback for that, like you're saying, non-personal attachment kind of dowsing. Let's douse with
Yeah.
objects that there's a binary yes no answer to, what color is this, is it red or orange, and things like that, just to get going, to flex those muscles, like getting used to yoga postures. Yoga's a lifetime practice, so is dowsing. Why not just get used to the basics, like the child pose or the tree pose, and over time you hone those skills and feel accustomed to that feedback that you're going to get. And dowsing is used in so many different ways. Just to sort of run through a few, for from experience, finding lost objects is a great one, not one that I'm naturally able.
I'm the same.
um, so yeah, I tried, and it isn't my dowsing type, but
Yeah.
nor does it need to be. I would get a professional to find a lost object. And there's a professional sort of register on the British Society of Dowsers webpage. And so people who are skilled with this amazing type of dowsing can help find lost pets, lost rings, lost objects of all sorts, and they're able to tune into it. They use a map, they work remotely. Bear in mind, a lost pet is a moving object usually. So yes, it's good to be very close to the remote dowser when you're trying to find a lost pet. And then we have energy healing dowsers who work with the body systems and lots of different protocols. As we know with the different traditions, there's lots of different systems. There's the five element theory that I love and enjoy working with, connected with the meridians and the five seasons. There's also the chakra system. There is also the energy bodies that we might be holding stuff in, or stuff might be blocked in, our etheric body, astral body, mental body, etc. And there are also dowsers who can just gently discern how to heal. Excuse me. Excuse me. There are dowsers who gently discern how to heal a home or to heal a business. There are ancestral wounds. There are past life, parallel lives, multiverse.
Yeah, that you can dial somebody's astrological chart and heal that way, and yes,
Oh,
so
tell me
many
more
different.
about that. I've not heard about.
Well, well, I first experienced something slightly different.
Mm.
I went for a birth chart healing and was asked to stand. So basically, they created my birth chart on the floor,
Oh
and I
wow.
was able to stand in certain parts. And when I was able to stand in it, I think partially because I'm quite connected to energies, I could feel and I could sense different things that needed healing or shifting. And so different things would call in different healings and then place crystals on those points to help balance it out and then move to the next part. So you can do the same with a birth chart. You can print out a birth chart and you can douse it and connect with the energy of what needs healing within your kind of main character, if you like.
Mm.
Um, and then you can balance it out with a crystal and then move on to something else. And yeah, it's quite an interesting way of working. It's not something that I do very often. But yeah, it's possible.
That's fascinating because I'll put a link in. I've mentioned briefly Melinda Iverson is a master dowser based in Hawaii. She's been a member of the British Society of Dowsers for many years. She's coming over in May at the Dowsing Symposium in Malvern to talk as a keynote speaker, and she's staying here in Ascot to teach dowsing with the constellations and crystals. And so, for example, the Pegasus constellation, Andromeda constellation, what might need healing within you. And it's this phrase I keep saying, as above, so below, as within, so without. And the stars seem, as well as the astrological connection, which I just love, um, they seem to be a map for our own inner cosmos.
Hmm.
And I'm going to be talking later today with somebody called Ray Bacon, who I met last night on the Earth Energies group call, who is a permaculture and intuitive garden designer and maker working with plants. And he was saying on the call that in Egypt on the Nile, they see the Nile as a reflection of the Milky Way.
Yeah.
And I really tuned into that. So there's this sort of stellar, sort of cosmic kind of, it's part of the mysticism, isn't it? The journey, the alchemy, inner alchemy space that opens up inside us. That if we notice these signs and mirrors and patterns and reflections back, and just see the absolute and feel the beauty and the resonance that these planets have with us and these stars, it's just limitless, isn't it? And dowsing can be just such a good vehicle, let's say, for us to tap into that field of consciousness, for us to use in alignment with other healing modalities that we might have in our toolbox. So Melinda teaches about, she's an NLP master practitioner, and she does a timeline therapy for unconscious emotional obstructions. So she's combining and fusing NLP with dowsing to great effect. And I've noticed the shifts when people, integrate trauma with that stuff that they couldn't consciously remember. And so when we use dowsing with other things, like where's the most beneficial place for this plant to be, planted, and where would it like to be? When's the right time to plant it? Does it want any food? Is it going to be happy here? So things like that, dowsing can just support us consciously gardening, consciously shopping. In the supermarket aisle, you can use your body to douse for, is this going to be beneficial for me? Because there's a lot of ingredients people are becoming aware of that may be non-beneficial. And so how do it's dowsing helps with discernment as well. Dowsing for a film, is this film going to energize me or deplete my energy if I watch it? So we can go through consciously and gracefully through life with thanks to dowsing. So you teach dowsing, and so have you got a course planned, upcoming, or where we can link to it in the show notes anyway?
Yes, I've got a course coming up in May in Avebury. I teach in the hen shop. They've got a classroom. So it's a beginner's workshop, but actually it's quite involved and can take you from a beginner into quite an advanced space, if you like. So if you are a beginner and you can dowse, then you might find that it's a really useful course. One of the things that I think is really good to mention as well is we're all tuned slightly differently. So when we come to dowsing, and we are a beginner of dowsing, you'll find that you're more tuned in to one type of energy than another. And what happens is, if you can work with that energy and just dowse a lot, so say you're more tuned in with earth energies. If you dowse earth energies a lot, what happens is, because you're becoming more in tune with that energy, because you're working with it, you then become more in tune with other energies. So you'll become more aware of people's energy, chakra energy, or you'll become more aware of water energy. And actually, that's one of the first things that you get to dowse when you come on my beginner's dowsing course, is I work with four main energies: water, earth energies, people's energies, and ghosts. And the first thing that you do is you walk into a square. It's got four circles in, and you find out which one you're more attracted to. You don't know what they are. But you're just naturally tuning in or finding what you're most attracted to. And then from there, you then get to work with that energy, which then helps you tune into other energies. So, yeah.
Oh, that sounds exciting, and I'd love to come to that. I'd love to
Yes,
try
come
that out
along.
because I love that principle because you're opening up a, let's say, a beautiful book, but it's a blank page.
Yes.
And where are you going to step into?
Yeah.
How are you going to navigate that? Because again, there's so much to dowsing. It's infinite. It literally is infinite, and it is beautiful. Um, I would love to sort of connect with which aspect is mine,
Yeah.
as if a humble beginner. And that's another thing. A beginner's mind is really helpful with dowsing, rather than I think I know. Um,
Quite often people walk into that square thinking, oh, it's going to be this one. I'm going to be more attracted to, let's say, earth energies.
mm,
And then they find the ghost energy first.
yes,
And it can like completely surprise you.
yes, yes,
So yeah, it's a really, really good exercise because you're blank
absolutely,
canvas.
absolutely. And that reminds me, there's another fascinating area to dowsing, the archaeological dowsers,
Mm, yeah,
who they're it's amazing because dowsing rods can detect where a building was, how deep is it underground, what
yeah,
the shape of it, just like the energy line mapping that people do.
yeah,
Um, and a few years ago, there's been a very dedicated and focused woman who's wanted to restore the very tarnished memory of Richard III.
right.
And he was turned into some kind of caricature almost, with the sort of, hunched over back and this sort of, quite twisted sort of persona in so many ways. A really good Tudor propaganda sort of machine, and along with Shakespeare, did a really good job on that. And she's felt passionately about it, which made me just feel inside. I wonder if she's got some past life impression connected with
Mm,
this, because it just seemed uncommon, the passion, but in a lovely way, a really
yeah.
driven, focused way. And she, with the help of archaeological dowsers, located Richard III's hitherto unlocated grave in a Leicestershire car park.
Mm,
And it was dug archaeologically, and it was proven to be the former king, Richard III. So
yeah.
dowsing can uncover things. You can douse for minerals, so somebody, a family friend from a few years ago, was dowsing for diamonds in South Africa. Um, you can do so much with dowsing, the health, everything. One thing I would say is good to sort of steer a little bit of a wide berth from is dowsing and gambling. Some people think, can I douse the lottery numbers?
Yeah.
If you really feel like that's your thing, just for me, dowsing, it just muddies the energy a little bit, the idea of that, of it's more for benefit rather than acquisitive material gain.
Yeah.
Gambling energy is a bit,
I think there's too much of an attachment to it as well. It's
definitely.
that personal attachment.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think, oh yes, let's douse the numbers for the lottery and then buy a ticket and then sit in disappointment that you haven't got any of the numbers. Yeah, it's just that personal attachment. You're too involved. It's just yeah, it's just not worth it. It's just not
Absolutely.
worth the energy.
Absolutely. And there's another event which you said about the hen shop in Avebury.
Yeah.
And I love how connected you are with Avebury.
Mm,
And maybe in another episode, we can talk a bit about Avebury because there's so
yes.
much there.
Yeah.
Maybe that's already forming as an idea for episode 2. Um, and there is another event in Marlborough up the road, on June the 1st and 2nd, with Adrian Ingleton Webber, who is an amazing dowser. His website is Dowsing Spirits. and he's got Earth Energies, the Alternative. So it's a 2-day event with some amazing speakers, and you can go for one or both days. And we'll put a link to that in the show notes as well, because I met Adrian over 20 years ago at a dowsing event, and his journey into dowsing is just an amazing story. And his skills, he's written an amazing book, Heal Your Home, which is like, it's got a worksheet, which is really helpful for dowsers, because again, that neutral thing, okay, I'm going to go through this list, which applies, which numbers. You can even just look at the numbers, not the content, if you like, and just really get that neutral observer dowsing for helping with healing homes, your own home, or, working with your friends and stuff. And is there any book you'd recommend? We've talked about Sun and the Serpent, Dowsing Spirits, Adrian's.
I'm not really big into reading, so not really.
So, but that's great as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Following your intuition.
Yeah. I mean, I have
Discovery thing.
kind of flicked through The Sun and the Serpent, and also one of their other books, Dance of the Dragon, which is the ley line going across through the tip of Cornwall and across Europe towards Israel. But yeah, like I say, I tend to be drawn to information and look up more specific information if I need to. I learned dowsing just through wandering through the forest, going, "Oh, what's this? Oh, what's that?" So you can do that. It is all possible. It does maybe take you a little longer to work out what everything is, but you will have your own unique view on the world without being taught by other people. So there's pros and cons to both. Depends what you want.
I feel that, and so it's nice to fuse them as well to benefit from both.
Yeah.
There's another book I found incredibly helpful, which if I was starting out, I would read this book because it's so practical, and there's also a lot of scientific evidence in it as well to help the skeptic inside us, if you like. And it's Dowsing by Elizabeth Brown.
Okay.
It's a really good book. It's got a blue cover. Again, we'll put a link to that and to her website. She does causative diagnosis. So in particular for things like cancer, it's how did this become this? And so therefore, is there anything that can be done to address the source cause of the disharmony and imbalance?
Right.
That is with a chronic or acute condition or disease. It could be environmental, it could be emotional, it could be a combination of things. And she gets to the nitty-gritty. So she's great. There's a Adventures in Dowsing podcast, which she talks through causative diagnosis, if anyone's interested, which we can link to as well. So what should we call this podcast?
I haven't thought about it because I thought, we'll just do the podcast and a name will come up.
That's interesting, because I felt like we could douse for a name.
Yeah, and the only name that just came up was Dragon Dowsing, but I don't know whether it's just because it's 2Ds and it's just like, oh, okay.
It feels like 2Ds is a good one.
Yeah.
And the only ones I've come up with is Divinely Dowsing or Discovering Dowsing.
Yeah. I prefer the Discovering Dowsing. Yeah.
So if I've got a pendulum here.
Yeah.
If it's saying no for Divinely Dowsing, it's going yes for back and forth for Discovering Dowsing.
That's really interesting because your yes and no are opposite to me.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, mine is anti-clockwise circle.
Okay. So for yes is like a clockwise for me. No is swinging backwards and forwards.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah.
And then also when I'm neutralizing non-beneficial emotions or thoughts or anything that needs neutralizing, It goes in an anti-clockwise, but then when I'm
Yeah.
balancing or saturating energy from, let's say, planetary energy or one of the seven rays or something, it goes clockwise circle until
Yeah.
it's done. And then it goes to, let's say, neutral position, which is swinging back and forth for me.
Okay. Yeah.
I was working with a person relatively new to dowsing the other day, one of my clients, and their response for neutral or it's done is like it kind of quivers in the middle, like shimmers in a
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
way.
See, for me, if it does that, then there's some like out of alignment energy, like big time out of alignment. When it starts quivering, it's just like, oh, okay, we need to do something here. So
Yes.
it's amazing how different it can be with
Mm,
different people. And,
mm,
just noticing if there's an elliptical circle that is maybe that the question needs adjusting. So to get a definitive answer, it's really, really interesting. And this is one of the reasons why I don't generally teach people as a beginner to use a pendulum because there's so many intricacies with it.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I've noticed with my pendulum, I sometimes get what looks like a spirograph flower.
Mhm. Okay.
And I've doused for why do I get that when I'm doing certain energy work, let's say, to balance. And I get a sense that it's because we're calling in a higher team. This works through us. It's not us, like the little me, myself,
Yeah.
I doing this. It's energy flowing through us, through the conduit of our body, mind, soul, and through the way we're holding the dowsing device, whether it's a pendulum or a rod. But with the pendulum, when it goes in this sort of elliptical flower pattern, I feel like it's my guides with me
Okay.
or some higher power actually showing, yes, we're a team, we're doing this together.
Yeah.
That's my bit of feedback I've had. So sometimes when it's like it's a pretty pattern and it feels like it's in harmony and yeah, there's a bit of grace feeling as well with it. That's a
Yeah.
nice experience.
Yeah.
Pendulum.
So I think just to one important thing I think we should mention is if you're dowsing outside of a neutral space, there is the possibility that you come up against some negative energy.
Hmm.
I think it's really useful that we just give an example of how to clear energies. And the
Yeah.
way I was first taught was invoking the violet flame,
Yeah.
um, which is very, very simple. It's I invoke the violet flame to transmute energy into light, and that's it.
Mm.
And it's actually working with Saint Germain.
Mhm.
Uh, and the thing that you might want to do when learning to clear energies or, at beginning clearing energies is to repeat it multiple times.
Mm.
Um, if you kind of look at it in the way that you're building a rapport with that way of working with energies, where to build that rapport, you will need to do it multiple times. And having cleared energy thousands of times, it's now very quick for me.
Mm. Mm.
But in the beginning, it wasn't that quick. I would maybe have to repeat it 5 or more times. And it's okay to do that.
Mm.
Just to kind of give a quick and easy way to clear energies.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah. And for people beginning as well, if they are working with a pendulum, I've found it's really beneficial to have a crystal in the palm and holding the pendulum above the crystal and asking for that crystal to be cleansed, cleared, balanced, open, and replenish, and also programmed like, please support me with my dowsing. And you can start to get a bit of feedback in your palm of your hand where the crystal's sitting. It kind of vibrates, sort of hums almost, sort of very
Mm.
softly and subtly. I was describing it yesterday to a client. It's a bit like in the film Raiders of the Lost Ark, where they've got the Ark of the Covenant and it's kind of in this crate and humming. It sort of feels like a crystal version of that, that
Yeah,
sense of you get that feedback, but it also somehow amplifies. Um, and also the mind, the left brain that likes to analyze and question and be sure and have certainty and categorize stuff can sometimes get in the way of our dowsing, which is more intuitive and also balancing both left and right brain hemispheres naturally. And you're going into a deep theta state every time you're questioning, you're going in and out of that deep meditative state. What's really nice to help relax the body mind is things like, what's your favorite meal? Or where's your happy place? Something that makes you smile inside. Because then we're
yeah,
not going to start out too seriously. It's not about being serious and sort of, full of endeavor. It's like more like openness, curiosity, and
yes,
just finding the joy in the process as
yeah,
well. Um, yeah. And the if people come across, like you mentioned about spirits, and that's quite a big area, and we can maybe dedicate
yeah,
an episode to that.
yeah,
What When I started my dowsing tuition, um, I was living in a home and I was scared in the middle of the night to go across the landing if I needed to go to the toilet. I just felt a bit of a feeling. And the dowsing weekend, I went to local adult college in Richmond to learn. I always wanted to learn dowsing properly, so I found a tutor, and it was really good. And we had this list of 20 questions. And is there a ghost or a spirit in your home? Came up as yes, and I was like, oh my gosh. Um, and so some of us might be a bit concerned or scared of that prospect of going into finding out about that and then what on earth to do about it. Um, I have a statement that I use, and it just was something I heard the lovely living master Matt Kahn say, which is, if there is anything that needs recognizing or respecting, please may it be guided to the doorway to heaven, which is my heart, with love and honor. May it be so. Thank you and amen.
okay,
And that's how I would address that in my way, if you like, because I loved how he said that, and I've made a couple of tweaks, but that kind of feels very uplifting. There are lots of different types of spirits, aren't there?
yeah, yeah. It's not clear cut, but yeah, I think, like you say, it's not to be afraid of spirits.
Mm,
They can affect your energy, but for the most part, they don't. That they're, they're not going to affect your energy in a massive way.
mm.
Yeah, this is a big conversation, so I'm not going to get into it right
We
now.
won't know because
No,
there's a whole other episode,
yeah,
right? There's so many stories and ways of doing this, and
yeah. I've worked with like thousands of ghosts, and yeah, I'm still sane, I think. Yeah, so I don't have any horror stories about ghosts, and I've worked with thousands of ghosts, so
absolutely. And there are really good tried and tested ways to work to
yeah,
heal. They're
yeah,
stuck. They're stuck here,
yeah,
and
totally,
they haven't found home yet.
yeah.
And it's just how with grace can we help them find the light? But yeah, I definitely feel there's another episode brewing. We hope that you've enjoyed this conversation. Hopefully, it's opened up some new ideas of possibility for you.
And if there's any questions and comments, it would be really great to hear that feedback and be able to answer those questions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening.